Learn the most advanced recruiting techniques. Land the most desirable talent. Launch your company towards massive success. This is the Higher Power Radio Show with Rick Girard.
All right. The remote interview is still a huge challenge for a lot of companies, especially those of you who are lacking a formalized process. Simply evaluating skills and heavily relying on a vibe to influence decisions is producing even worse results in this work from home environment. Too much is able to remain hidden because the video is limiting on nonverbal cues that happen throughout the interaction. Assumptions, bias, and misinformation have become the new plague in today's video interview. Today is about nailing your video interviews in a remote environment and how to ensure the strongest hire. I'm Rick Girard. Welcome to the Higher Power Radio Show. Our mission is to help entrepreneurs and business leaders win the right hire. We share insights from top-performing rebel entrepreneurs, disruptors, and industry leaders like our guest today, Miss Brenna Loury. She is the head of marketing for Doist. Brenna knows that the road to success isn't a path you find, it's a trail you blaze. Fueled by her unorthodox marketing efforts, Brenna left her PR firm and joined Doist full-time in 2014. She handles everything from overall marketing strategy to HR duties to writing website copy. She's helped expand Doist's remote first team from 5 to 92 employees in over 35 countries. And her grassroots marketing strategies have helped bring the company to over 25 million users globally. So, and here's the kicker, guys. Everybody in her company is remote. So this is what makes Brenna the perfect expert for today's topic. Brenna, welcome to the Higher Power Radio Show today.
Thank you, Rick. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you. So today we're going to discuss the video interview, especially in the this challenging environment. We're going to talk about why it's so challenging today and then how to master the video interview. Sound like a plan?
Sounds good to me.
Right, camera. All right. So let's talk a little bit about the challenge today. So, a lot of clients, a lot of companies that I talk to, a lot of CEOs are still having this challenge with this video interview and not really able to gauge information. Like the biggest thing is not able to read those nonverbal cues, not being able to see if somebody's nervous, what they're doing. It's just kind of plagued with assumptions and there's unconscious bias that's probably even creeping in more now in video interviews. What do you see as kind of some of the challenges that have come into play? I mean, you guys aren't really dealing with this at the same level because you've been 100% remote, but think back to when you were starting out. I mean, what were some of the issues you guys had?
Yeah, I mean, like you mentioned, we've been a fully remote company for about a decade now. I've actually never met any of the people who I have interviewed or hired in person. Like all of the interviews I have ever done at Doist have been digital. So we've always had to figure out some unique ways to jump over these hurdles of not relying on nonverbal cues and really structuring the interview in a way that lets you learn a lot about somebody without being there right next to them.
Yeah. So let's talk about this not meeting people in person. I mean, this is a normal thing for you, but it's very, very foreign for a lot of companies right now.
Yeah.
How is it that you're able to kind of really gauge whether or not somebody's going to be valuable to the organization?
Yeah. I mean, we have spent kind of the last decade trying to perfect this mathematical equation of who fits best at Doist, and also not closing the door to people who we think aren't necessarily a perfect fit, but who have the potential to be a perfect fit in the future. So that goes from everything to the way that we structure interviews. We have a specific hiring committee, and we ask all of the questions to our applicants based on our core values, which are really important for us. And we try and kind of like embed those in everything that we do, including the software that we develop. So that has been a great way for us to approach hiring in a way that like prioritizes cultural fit instead of like, hiring necessarily the most 100% perfect skilled person. Like the person has to be a great cultural fit first.
All right. So please say that again, because that's really important. And I don't think enough people get that.
Yeah, I mean, it's huge, especially as a remote company. Like, you're not sitting next to your coworkers. Like, you don't have, at least we don't have like that, we don't have weekly meetings. We don't have these daily stand-ups or whatever. So we really have to be able to trust our team members and employees. We have to be able to like make sure we can communicate properly with them. So yeah, cultural fit is like by far the biggest priority for us. And should be for other remote teams or like people operating in this remote environment, because you don't really have like that much like additional foundation to go on,
Yeah, it's really changed the environment for people who need a lot of hand holding, right? Because you just don't have the ability to do it.
Totally.
So
yeah.
You kind of have to recognize, hey, look, we're not in an environment anymore where we can do that. So
I mean, yeah, and that's one thing that we have to hire for. Like one of our core values is independence. Like, so we do add a lot of questions into our interview process, like trying to suss out if these people are going to be a good fit in terms of like working autonomously and not needing to be micromanaged or handheld at all. Cause like one, ain't nobody got time for that. And two, like you just, you can't do it. You can't do your job well and also micromanage people.
Why is it important to our listeners for them to get good at this, to understand that, like, the video interview, if you do it right, will add value to the bottom line or to their ROI?
Yeah, I mean, like I'm not sure how else you would do it these days, but like in my experience, a video interview is just as valid as an in-person interview, even though you're not there to pick up on the nonverbal cues. So I think you just have to do it in a way that like you're asking really smart questions and you're going through like a pretty methodical process in order to find the right candidate.
Yeah, and this has been important to your company because you guys have been able to have a really, really high retention rate through this,
Yeah.
right? What's your retention rate?
I think it's like between 95 and 98% of people have stayed with the company like voluntarily for the last 10 years. So it's pretty high. I think people are happy.
So super low attrition rate. You have people that are staying there, that are engaged, that want to be there. And it's because you guys hire on culture first.
Yeah, definitely. And it's something that you can really feel like as you onboard a new person, like very rarely will you have to have a conversation of like, oh, this person is kind of surly, or like, watch out for this person. They're kind of like a bad apple. Everybody is a really great person, and people really work well together because we try and filter out for a great cultural fit.
And I would imagine, like, when you're onboarding, you don't have to show them where the bathroom is.
Luckily, no. Yeah, I've avoided that for the time being. Yeah.
Fantastic. All right. So because you're hiring for culture, you feel like most of the people there, at least probably for yourself, you can say you're happy with the quality of the work and you're engaged more because of it.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I mean, and I've hired people who may not necessarily, kind of like what I said before, they may not necessarily be a perfect skill fit to the T, but in my opinion and in my experience, like you can learn skills on the job, but you can't necessarily learn to be like an empathetic person overnight, So yeah.
You can change who you are. Your values are your values, and that's,
Yeah.
whether or not they fit into the organization. I think it's important for people who are looking for a job to ask themselves, like, do the values of this company match up with me as well?
Right.
I think a lot of people are just looking for that paycheck sometimes, that they overlook that. And then
Yeah, it's a two-way street for sure. And it's, the way we work is not, not ideal for some people. Like, we work in a way that is very kind of like heads down. We don't do a lot of direct messaging. Like, we try and keep meetings to a minimum. So, if you're like a super extroverted person who thrives on like a lot of connection, then it might not be the best place for you.
Yeah. See, that's really important that's really important and you're able to, when you meet those people, you're able to say, hey, look, we're not this environment, so you're not going to fit here, right?
Right, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, which is going back to the core values, like what I mentioned about being independent and like, you can go about your work during the day and you don't need hand holding and you don't need like this constant need to like be in a meeting with people. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's very important.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. All right. You're listening to the Higher Power Radio Show. I'm your host, Rick Gerard. And for our podcast listeners, we're going to take a quick educational moment from our sponsors. Hey, check out stridesearch.com. There you'll find additional content and resources to help your company land great hires. Our guest today is Brenna Loury. She is the head of marketing for Doist. I want to keep saying Doist, but I know it's Doist. And we're discussing the video interview and the challenges of a remote work from home environment. All right. So we just talked a little bit about kind of what you guys do. And thank you, by the way, for confirming or like really what you guys are doing in the proof of the 98% or 95% retention rate is huge. And I think a lot of companies need to pay attention to that. So how do we build a process into a company? Like, what do you guys do that has been successful? So walk me through kind of your interview process.
Sure. Yeah. So we have been kind of like fine tuning this process for about a decade or so. So I'm hoping that it's useful for people who are just finding themselves maybe for the first time in a remote environment. But we put together a hiring committee based on the job that is available.
Right. So explain to me what a hiring committee is.
Right. So it'll be usually it's 3 people. So that would be like the hiring manager. It would be a colleague from this person's future team. And then it would be somebody from our CXO team, usually, or another department head.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So you've got a committee and they're interviewing everybody.
No. So I'll walk you through that. So yeah, once we've put together the hiring committee, like the job is posted, we start receiving applications. And part of this application process is, people send their resume. I think they can send a cover letter as well. But like one of the most important, in my opinion, aspects of our application process is a set of application questions that we ask. So I think I mentioned to you, Rick, like for me, I go in and look at the answers to these questions first, and then I look at the resume because then I can see immediately, like, did this person do even like the most minimal amount of homework, and then go from there. So from there, we filter out our Sorry.
Those are kind of like call to action questions to give you insight into who the person is.
Yeah, so it'll be anything like, why are you interested in working at Doist? And then there is usually a few like job-related questions. Like if I'm hiring somebody for the marketing team, I'll throw in a question like, what is a brand that you feel passionate about and why? And just make sure that these people can like put together some coherent thoughts, because another one of our core values is communication. Like working at Doist, we do almost everything asynchronously and text-based. Everything is written, so people have to know how to write really well. So that's another sort of filter for us there. So yeah, I use these questions to go through and filter out like some of the best candidates. And then the first interview is usually with the hiring manager. And that first interview is always more or less based around cultural fit. So we'll ask.
Let me just stop you real quick. So with that, because this is really good. So how much value do you put on the resume versus the answers to the questions?
I don't know if I'm going to get in trouble for saying this, but like I definitely prefer to look at the yeah, sorry, HR department, but I I hands down like filter out candidates based on the answers to their questions first. And if I see somebody with like, solid answers, then I'll go in and see their resume and see if their skill set matches up with what we're looking for the position. Yeah, I think that what people write in those questions, like even they may be so simple, but it's really telling. And it's really important for us, like, especially in the marketing team, like we need people who are really excellent writers. And at Doist in general, because everything we do mostly is written, so it's very useful.
I couldn't agree with you more. Like I think we do these things called call to actions, where it's 3 questions, and I think that's far more valuable than a resume. And when people don't answer them, or they just put like 3 lines, I like your company because I need a job or something.
Right.
There's I call them like no-brainer answers. Like those don't really. You're not trying.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's like immediate rejection.
It's like
you have to put some thought into it. I think we did a calculation, and like our acceptance rate of our jobs to applications is like on par with Harvard or something like that. We get like an insane amount of applications for each job. And so it's a really easy way for us to weed out people who like don't put any in any effort at all,
Yeah, we've actually put those in the job posting at the end, where we say, look, if you don't answer these questions to the best of your ability, don't expect us to move forward with you.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So if you're applying anywhere and you see those questions, like put some thought into it.
Totally, it makes a big difference.
Evaluate it based on that.
Yeah,
well, I mean, it's all the difference in the world, especially if you're looking for a job right now, right?
Totally. Yep.
All right, so let's go to the interview.
All right. So yeah, if you pass, all of these initial first steps, like your resume looks good, your answers to the questions are solid, then we'll invite you for a first interview, which tends to be with the hiring manager of the position. And I think I mentioned before, like we tend to curate these questions based on our core values, with probably like a few industry specific questions, interspersed in there as well. So like, if I'm hiring somebody for the marketing team, some of the questions that I might ask, like, what are the challenges that our products are trying to solve that most excite you? Like, super easy question to see if this person has done their homework and like knows about our brand and our products. Another question that I like to ask is to ask a candidate to provide like constructive feedback on some aspect of our marketing. So I'll usually say like, what do you think about our landing pages for our app Todoist? Like, what would you change? And if the person is like, oh, they look great, awesome job, that is not good for me, because I want to know that this person can be radically candid, because that's a value that's really important for us.
Do you guys have a library of questions that are built?
Yes. But I've also been doing this for a long time, so I have kind of my top favorite questions that I ask.
I feel like I'm leading the witness, and if we were in court, I'd get in trouble.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. So do you like, and then depending on how the person performs in this interview, we will invite them to have another interview with like a colleague from their team, which is a more technical interview based on the skills that the person is going to need for the role.
Okay, so you're also setting up your interview in checkpoints, right? So you actually have, get past you first, then you go to the next thing. Now that next person is going to be a highly technical interview to see, it's going to be skills based primarily, right?
Yeah, definitely. So, the questions are going to be mainly technical, though. Like I don't think we ever like eschew the part of the cultural fit. So, maybe 8 of 10 questions or something are going to be technical, and then there'll be a few in there that are also to judge for a cultural fit. But like I was looking around at some of my colleagues, question banks, and one of those is like, what advantages or disadvantages of using CSS pre-processors? Like the stuff is quite technical for that interview. So we also have to
right now.
I don't know. Yeah.
No idea.
Yeah, so it's pretty technical, and from there, like this is definitely like a stop and go process, because after that, then the person, if they pass that interview, then they'll be invited to do a test project, which we pay people for. I think
this would be like basically your technical assessment, right?
Yep.
To be able to get a view of their quality of their work that they do.
Definitely.
Okay.
Yeah, so in the past, some of those have been like create a week-long social media plan for our brands, or recently we hired a new product marketer, and that test project was like write a blog post about, XYZ product update that didn't happen. So, they have to invent things somewhat from zero.
Got it.
Yeah.
Wait, now you said you pay people to do this?
Yeah, I think it's unconventional, which seems strange,
No.
but like I think people tend to spend a lot of time on this, so we like to compensate people for the time that they spend.
You have them check hours and then pay them hourly, or how
Yeah,
really?
And that's for everybody. Like even if they aren't hired, if you end up doing a test project for us, you will get paid for it. Yeah.
See, that alone should validate the reason why you should spend time answering those questions up front.
Yeah, I don't know why that's not like an industry standard. It seems kind of, people have a lot going on in their lives, especially now. It seems,
I've always seen that as being a hindrance for, really good people, especially people who are not actively looking for a job. Maybe they've been recruited for a role, and you ask them to do a test project, they don't do it, or they'll just rush through it, and they're not motivated to do it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Unless they really, really want the role.
Yeah.
For some reason.
I mean, definitely, like you can put obviously like as much or as little effort into it as you want, but like if you want it to be worth your time, you should spend like a good amount of time on this. And that's that's hard. Like a lot of us, we have kids, like we have hobbies, families, it's just, yeah.
Yeah. Well, and trying to get somebody to do it on a Saturday when their mind is not into it too.
Yeah.
I would imagine doing it late at night when you're motivated because you're going to get paid for it. That helps.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's some kind of incentive, but yeah, like it's
not necessarily like what everybody wants from a incentive perspective, but at least it's more than what anybody else is offering.
It's just our small way to show gratitude for like the time that people spend on this task, because it's, if it's well done, then they're probably spending a lot of time on it.
Yeah, that's very cool.
Yeah.
All right, so let's talk about the final interview would be with the leader executive, right? So what does that entail?
Yeah, so that's another cultural fit interview. Again, like we lay out all of our questions beforehand and in a kind of master Google Doc. So we don't overlap in any of the questions, which I think is helpful. So the last interview, if you like all of these milestones, then you'll do an interview with our CXO team or like another department head at Doist. And that's more than anything, another cultural fit interview.
Now, I'm assuming you guys all documented in that Google sheet for every interview on the questions, right? Document out all the answers.
Yep. We list out all of the questions that we have, and like all the pertinent information, like what the test task is, like the link to the test task spec, everything is in one place and easy to find. Yeah.
And it makes it easy to gather feedback if everybody's documenting it.
Right. Yep. And one thing,
like the biggest challenge a lot of times is like when you get that executive, he goes into the interview and then you got to try and pin him down or him or her down, right? To get the data so that you can make the decision.
Yeah. So I guess another piece of this hiring puzzle is that after anybody in the hiring committee, after you do an interview, we have like a Google form that people have to fill out, and you have to rank people like depending on their cultural and skills fit. And there you share any feedback, and that's exclusively for the HR team. But then the person has to reach a certain score of like a 3 out of 4 or above, like 75% or above, basically,
Yeah.
to be able to be hired. And then anybody on the hiring committee can veto any candidate. So it has to be a hell yes or no, basically.
Yep. It's either a hell yes or a nope.
Yeah, exactly.
That's
Yeah.
what it should always be. All right, awesome. Thanks so much, Brenna, for kind of sharing this with us. What would be 2 or 3 key takeaways you can give the audience so they can plug into their business today?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's kind of obvious. I feel like I've sounded somewhat like a broken record during this
Not
call,
at all.
but
Like, people
um,
need to hear this.
definitely.
Like, it's really important.
Yeah, I mean, that's how important it is for us and how like instrumental it has been for us, like having this really high employee retention rate is prioritizing like all of your hiring for cultural fit. You can always teach somebody some skills that they may lack in a certain area. You can teach them that on the job, but you can't teach a person like a very important like human skill like
Value.
are you a nice person? Um, and then I guess we didn't touch on this too much, but it's something that's very important for us is to like do everything that you can in your power as a company to really cultivate a culture of trust over tracking. Like solving the equation for trust, I think solves like a litany of other issues that a lot of companies deal with, especially in a remote environment. So anything that you can do to create an environment that's based on trust is going to do you well.
That's fantastic. All right. Well, shoot, we're just about out of time for today's show. Brenna, thanks so much for your time investment today. And I want to welcome you to the Higher Power Radio community. Now, what would be the best way in which members of our audience could find Doist, find yourself? Here's some plug time for you if you want to.
Sure. Yeah. So, and actually this, all of our hiring steps are on our corporate website, which is doist.com, DOIST.com. So you can read about all of that there. And we have a bunch of blog posts about remote hiring, remote onboarding. So hopefully that's useful to people. And you can find me on Twitter. I'm at Brenna KL. Thank you again for having me, Rick. It went really fast. I feel like we could keep talking for another 27 minutes.
I know we probably could. I know in our phone call prior.
Yeah.
For a while. All right, shoot. Well, I want to thank this week's audience for tuning in to this week's episode of Higher Power. Quick thanks to our team, Brian Colburn, Andrea Ballin, and Ayla Gerard. If you're listening to the podcast, please subscribe, review, and share. After all, this show is for you, Mr. and Mrs. Entrepreneur. We welcome your feedback. You can join the Higher Power Radio community at Hire, H-I-R-E, Power, P-O-W-E-R, Radio, R-A-D-I-O.com, or you can drop me an email at rick@stridesearch.com. Tune in next Tuesday. Our guests are going to be Michael Surreal. He's the founder and CEO of EF Overwatch, and George Randall, the head of global talent acquisition for ForcePoint. I'm your host, Rick Gerard, and you have been listening to the Higher Power Radio Show. Aloha. Aloha.
Thank you for listening to Higher Power Radio. Catch our LinkedIn Live show every Tuesday at noon or download the podcast on iHeartRadio, iTunes, YouTube, or your favorite podcast platform. We appreciate you joining us on Higher Power Radio with your guide to recruitment success, Rick Gerard.